Okay, we're going to look at solving trig equations. So we've been given this trigonometric equation that 2 times 10x squared plus 4 times 10x is equal to 0. We are in hopes that we are going to isolate for possible angles for x, and we're going to look for answers between, I should have said this, x is between 0 and 360 degrees for our angles, okay? So the first thing we need to do is do a little bit of common factoring. If you notice that there is a tan x in both of these, and also actually the number, 2 and 4, we can also take out a common variable of 2 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide both of these by 2 tan x, and divide this by 2 tan x. Essentially, we're common factoring out 2 times tan x. And what we are left with when we divide this is just 10x plus 2, okay, is equal to 0. In this case, is this going to work? Yes. Okay, so this will work. So first of all, we have this number 2 here. I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by this 2 because this 2 doesn't have a variable attached to it. We don't actually really need it. So if we divide both sides of the equation by 2 here, these 2's cancel out and create a 1. Okay. For all intents and purposes, they're essentially gone, and 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So now we're left with 10x multiplied by 10x plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so think of these as two terms that multiply to 0. Well, if both terms multiply to 0, that means that one of them must be 0. So we're going to test two possible answers here. We're going to split this equation. We're going to play with 10x is equal to 0, and we're going to play with 10x plus 2 is equal to 0. And we're going to go through the process of solving this. So in this case, we're going to do the tan inverse. So x is equal to tan inverse of 0. Okay, and we'll put that in our calculator, see what it gives us. Over here, I'm going to move to the other side, so we're left with 10x is equal to negative 2. And then we're going to find the tan inverse of negative 2. And see what our calculator gives us. Okay, so over here, we're going to do tan inverse of 0 is 0. There we go. So one of our possible angles is 0. And that also means because we are finding between 0 and 360, there is another possible answer to this. We'll get into that in a second. First, let's solve the other possible angle we're looking at. So tan inverse of negative 2. Tan inverse of negative 2. Negative 63.4. Yeah, let's go with approximately negative 63.4. Okay, 63.4. So let's bring out our cast system here and our 4 quadrants. So here's our Cartesian plane, and we have quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you recall the cast system, it just lets you know which operations are positive in which quadrant. I'm going to move these over. C-A-S-T. Great. If we have 0 as an angle, technically, so 0 is one of our angles, that also means 180 is one of our angles, okay? Technically, again, 360 could be one of our angles because it does say less than and equal to. Any question I think I've given, if you end up with a 0, I think it's actually just less than 360. Okay? So we're not going to include 360 as an answer here. We're going to say that's outside of our range. Okay, so it's less than 360. But be aware, if the range was larger, you could continuously go. It could be 360, 450. You can keep building and building all the way around with like coterminal angles. Let's leave that part. So we have 0 and 180 as two possible answers. Okay, and think of that because of which quadrants we're in quadrant 1, where all angles are positive. 0 is neither positive or negative, but essentially our angles always work off the horizontal line. So you could say quadrant 1 and quadrant 3, that's where tan is our positive angle, and that's where we started with 0. So we got 0 and we got 180. It didn't move from there. I know that can sometimes be a complex concept to get around. Our next one is negative 63.4. So there's two ways you can think of this. One of them is we can highlight quadrants where 10 is negative. Well, that would be quadrant 2 and then quadrant 4. Okay, and we can go from the horizontal line 63.4 degrees. So in this quadrant, if we were to create an angle, we can go 63.4 degrees, and we know tan's negative in this one. And same with this concept. We're going to go 63.4 degrees from the horizontal, from the x-axis, okay? And then we can build our angles from there. Well, we know in this case, we would take 180 and go back 63.4 degrees. And same concept here, we go from 360 degrees, we go back 63.4 degrees. So there's two possible answers. The other way you could tactically think of that is if you have negative 63, just start always in the quadrants that where 10 is positive. So in quadrant 1, we start here and we're going to go negative 63. So I know I realize you think of it as we're starting from 0, so we're actually going to negative 63.4, but again, that wasn't part of, that isn't within our range. So a good way to think of it is just going back from 360. The other way you could have done it again is starting in quadrant 3 where 10 is positive, and we went negative 63.4. So we didn't actually enter these quadrants because the negative value pulled our angles backwards instead of going forwards in these quadrants, okay? Whichever is easier for you to comprehend, use that method. So let's calculate our two angles here. We have 180 subtract 63.4 and 360 subtract 63.4, okay? Well, go over to our handy calculator here. 180 minus the answer I had before. Go back to the main, okay? So I've got two negatives here. So I'm actually going to add that negative. There we go. 116.5. So 116.5 degrees is one of the angles. And the other one is 360. And I'm going to say plus again because it's going to give me that. Oh, it took me the answer from before. I don't want that answer. I want this answer. Can I copy it and paste it? Let's find out. I cannot. Okay. We'll just subtract 63.43. And obviously we could keep going. It's approximately 296.5. So 296.5. So what does that mean? That means we had many answers. In this one here, we had two answers. We had x could be 0 degrees, 180 degrees. I left a gap there because in our other half, okay, with our negative 63.4, we also got 116.5 degrees and 296.5 degrees. So there were four possible answers here. The question might say put the largest angle within that range, the smallest, something like that. So you choose the angle that suits what the question is asking. But in our case, our largest angle that would fit this here would be 296.5. So the concept is if you plugged in 296.5 into this equation above, it would make the left side of the equation 0, essentially equal to the right side of the equation. Okay?